Hey everybody, greetings and welcome to today's CAFETA webinar. We are coming to you live on April 15th, 2025. If anybody hasn't been to one of our CAFETA webinars before, know that our webinars get the name CAFETA from the Creek word for learning. And today you're going to be learning about money management for tribal members from your instructor, Shante Moore, who's a certified financial educator with Native American Literacy Services, or Financial Literacy Services, excuse me. My name is Brooke Warrington. I'm the Training and Development Specialist at the Native Learning Center. We're also grateful that you could tune in for today's webinar. If you could follow along while I read the disclaimer aloud, know that this webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. We also have our copyright infringement law pictured here, so just a friendly reminder that the webinar materials are protected by copyright, trademark, trade secret, and other intellectual property laws. If you're new to the system, know that you can access a copy of today's presentation slides, as well as the rest of the webinar materials, and in the future, the webinar recording in the courses section that's pictured here. You can also access any of the other webinar materials that we've done on this platform. Feel free to share that with your friends, share it with your colleagues. And now that you have registered for the learning platform, you won't have to register anytime in the future. If you see that we are doing a webinar that you're interested in, you'll simply log in during the webinar time, and you'll see that green banner at the top of your screen, and you'll click it to join the webinar just like you did today. We do ask that you join with listen-only capabilities. It just helps to cut down on audio feedback for our instructor. And if you've joined and you notice that the sound is not coming from the correct speaker device that you would like to be using, maybe you'd prefer your headphones and it's coming out of your laptop speaker. Maybe you have Bluetooth speakers connected and it's coming out of your laptop instead. Whatever the situation may be, you can go down to the bottom of your screen and click on that telephone icon, and that's going to bring up a list of your mic and speaker devices, and you can click the right one that you want to use. We do have several ways for you to interact during today's webinar. We're going to primarily focus on the public chat. If you don't yet have that expanded, you can go over to this menu panel and click on public chat, and it'll open for you. I've already put a link to today's presentation slides in the chat. And there are other helpful links in the shared notes section. There's a link to today's webinar feedback survey, a link to today's slides, a link to a free ebook that Shante has available for you for download. And then, of course, throughout today's webinar, if you have any questions or any comments, any tech support issues that you have, feel free to use the chat to communicate those to us. You'll just click on the box that says send message to public chat, type in what you'd like to say or ask, and then you can hit on your enter button, or you can click on this little paper airplane icon button to submit it, and then everyone will see in the public chat. If you may be joined with your mic unmuted, you can always mute it down here on the bottom of the screen with the mic icon. And if you send a question into the chat and you think we've missed it, you could always use the raise hand feature to draw attention to it. We would love it if you guys took a moment to get the chat box going now. You can let us know what your name is, where you're tuning in from. It's nice to see all the different locations that we have webinar attendees living in, your work or your role in Indian country that led you to today's webinar, and then your tribal affiliation if you have one. And then while you folks are getting the chat box going, I do have one final note. Just try your best to avoid clicking on this red menu panel that's all the way to the left-hand side of your screen. Yours might just be the little icons that you see all the way to the left, but just know that if you do click on that during the webinar, it will immediately pull you out and take you to whatever option you've selected. You'll always be able to rejoin by clicking that green banner at the top of the screen, but I do just want to give you a heads up that if you click on that, it's going to pull you out of the webinar and take you somewhere else on the website. All right, folks, so while you're introducing yourselves in the public chat, it is with great pleasure that I introduce your webinar instructor for today, Shante Moore. And Shante, I have made you presenter now.
Okay, sounds good. Hi, Brooke. Thank you so much for that introduction. And hello, everyone, for joining today's webinar. Really excited about this topic, money management for tribal members. And I want to get started with my own disclaimer because being a financial services professional Compliance is always top of mind, and I want to make sure that we're clear in, what I'm here to do today, which is just to educate you all, to provide some education. So real quickly, this presentation is designed for educational purposes only. I will be going through examples and hypothetical scenarios, and that's just that. They're just examples. Nothing should be construed as an advice. I actually will specifically educate on certain strategies that I think most folks, it makes sense for when it comes to managing their money, but in no way should that be me saying, hey, you need to do this, or I'm not advising you to. I'm just educating you on options that are available. And also, especially for those who are watching the recording, in the financial industry, laws constantly change. Tax laws constantly change. Happy tax day today. Real quick, April 15th only matters if you owe money. You think you'll owe money to the IRS, you need to file an extension. Otherwise, if you think you're getting a refund, you'll be good. You can file your taxes after the deadline. I don't know if anyone needs to hear that message, but it is tax day, and there's constant changes in tax laws, insurance laws, investment laws. I will talk about these 3 different areas. And so, again, if you're watching the recording later down the line, keep that in mind as well. And you won't learn everything on this presentation, that I'm going to talk about certain things very high level. Literally all these topics I could talk about 1 hour or longer, just on their own. So happy to see everyone where you all are checking in from. So let's go ahead and get started. I want us, when I think about like money management for tribal members, I want us to start dreaming again, to really get to a place where we really believe that we can be better with finances, that we can be financially well off. And I mention this because it just seems that so many people, and I'm talking about Native communities specifically, because I teach workshops all across the country, and Native populations seem to stop dreaming. We seem to, and depending on your tribe, wherever you're from, it's all different, but I see a general sentiment of I'm broke, I'm poor, and it'll always be this way. And it hurts my heart when, our tribal community members feel that way and they think that way, and they don't really see a way out. And I've been there. I've been poor. I grew up very poor on the south side of Chicago. I'm based in the Midwest. I was born on the reservation, but I moved to the Midwest since I was a toddler. And I grew up very poor. And I'll talk, I'll kind of share a little bit about my story, as we go along as well. But it really just hurts my heart that so many of our tribal members just don't see a way out. They just don't think it can be better. And especially with I guess our current political and economic climate, the media perpetuates those ideas. It's always somebody else's fault. And it's hurtful. And what I know is that when you become educated, and I'm talking about financially educated, no one can take that away from you. Benjamin Franklin on the screen here said it best: an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. And that's what I want to impart on you all. I want to give you all some of that financial education. Let's start thinking like wealthy, not thinking like we're poor and I'm a sucker and I can't do better. Let's start having a wealthy mindset, because it's what's in your mind, which makes you wealthy. Having that knowledge, again, no one can take that away from you. And the reality is, it's not just our tribal communities that are suffering. Financial illiteracy is the #1 economic crisis in the world. This is a nationwide issue in the U.S. We're considered the richest country of the world, but we're not financially literate. This is a worldwide issue. It's where worldwide folks don't know how money works. And so what does that actually mean? When you break down the definition of literacy, it means first that you have some competency. You have a knowledge in a specified area. That's according to Oxford University Press. Financial literacy means you understand how to earn money, how to spend money, how to save it, how to manage it, how to invest money. And that's according to the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, their definition. And for me, it's, again, having and understanding basic financial principles. You really can't go wrong. Frederick Douglass said, once you learn to read, you will be free forever, or forever free. Think about if you learn how money works, wouldn't that be the same? Like, again, you know what to do, what not to do. You can't be taken advantage of. So, let's apply those same ideas and concepts. And the reality is we need to have these conversations. I'm actually, if you stay connected with me, a platform that I work with is actually starting to do a study on individuals' level of financial education. And we will be able to actually segment it by ethnicity and race. I mean, obviously, I know Native peoples aren't a race; it's a nation to nation matter. But if we want to help get our information on our tribal population, we're going to have a survey that will actually come out to where folks can pinpoint, have a point in time to answer 20 to 25 questions about money, and then they'll be able to determine, are they more educated, are they learning more? And that data is super important. I'm really excited about it, and I'm really excited to bring it to tribal communities, specifically because when we hear about statistics regarding finances, we're hearing about it from a nationwide perspective, from an American perspective, and those are some of the statistics listed here. 44% of Americans can't cover a $400 emergency. So just thinking, like, if I remember at the end of last year, my catalytic converter went out on my vehicle. I've heard of these things going out or being stolen, but good God, it was over a $3,000 fix. Thankfully, doing the work that I do, I had the funds available to take care of that. 44% of Americans can't come up with $400, and what they have to resort to is a credit card. Over $9,300 is the average credit card debt balance for households, when they're maintaining a balance and they're not being paid off, which means, we know that when you owe money to someone, you have to pay back interest, right? So over a 30-year time period, that's over $37,000 in interest that someone would pay when they initially charged, $9,000. It's, same thing like with your mortgage. It's just insane. We don't know how these numbers work. This last one is pretty scary to me. And I actually want to talk about it because it'll preclude my next webinar here with Native Learning Center. 33% of American adults have zero retirement savings. Zero. No retirement savings, have nothing saved at all. So then the question is, how are we going to retire, and what income will we live off of? Or will we have to work for the rest of our lives? And that could be an issue for folks as well. And at the end of the day, we know that, especially with retirement, no generation is saving enough. No generation is saving enough. We think, I think I've seen more debates and conversations about, like, the baby boomers versus Gen X generation versus millennials versus I think it's Gen Z right now, and the alpha generation, our little young ones, our preteens and younger generation who are, growing up right now. Every generation was different with how they handled their finances. Economies were different. And I think, oh man, I should have pulled it out. It was a recent article that said, for the first time in history, I think it's the millennial generation is more financially worse off than the previous generation. Because normally every generation is better off than the previous generation. For the first time in history, millennials, I'm actually the older, on the upper end of that older millennial age. My generation is worse off than our parents' generation. You can expect to live off of at least 80% of your pre-retirement income, in retirement. Meaning if you make like $1,000 every 2 weeks, in retirement, you'll need to live off of at least $800. And the reality is, again, we're not on track. Most folks are not on track. All right, let me give you one doom and gloom. I think that's all my doom and gloom statistics. The reality is, though, we don't learn about money in school. We often don't learn from our parents. So where do we learn from? And I try to help folks understand, again, like when I work with tribal families, and they're just, we're poor, they don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm like, first of all, don't beat yourself up. Like, we didn't learn how to manage our finances in school. Only 28 out of 50 states and this was as of last year, require a high school student to take a personal finance course to graduate. I know in my home state in Illinois, that's not required. Our neighbor states, Indiana and Wisconsin, don't also require it. So if we don't learn about it in school, and our parents don't learn about money, they don't have money either. Like, I grew up poor. My mom and dad did the best that they could. They just didn't have that financial education to pass down on to my sister and I. We often learn through trial and error as we become adults. We realize, like, oh, now I understand what a credit card is. Now I understand why it's important to maintain my credit score. Now I understand, the importance of paying bills on time. We learn through trial and error. And if you think about, if you've been managing your money in adulthood for a period of time, 10, 20, 30 years, it's hard to reverse and course correct later in life. It probably will take you 10, 20, 30 years just to get back on track. So I think it's super important to have the education to, no matter where you are in life, no matter how old you are, no matter what your finances are, we as tribal people can do better with our finances. We can take steps to improve. And that's my overall message as I go through this information today. Another thing I wanted to talk about too was that, again, I find that, and I see it, and I'm not like an expert in this area, but as Native peoples, we tend to have historical trauma around money. And I can't talk about money management if I don't address or acknowledge that trauma. Whether it's generational trauma, our culture, our tribes, whether it's, bad decisions, or unfavored decisions of current or past leaders. I mean, it's sometimes I've seen where we talk about wealth in a bad way, almost to where it's like, oh, those rich people are horrible people. They're not like us. They need to be taxed more. And, and I'm not here. Maybe you believe that yourself. I don't know. But I think that it's okay to have money. I think it's okay to become wealthy. I think it's okay to build wealth and become rich, and whatever that, definition is for you. Because we can still honor our culture and be good people with wealth. Native people have always had to conserve their resources wisely. If we think about our ancestors, they knew how to barter. They knew how to trade. They knew how to live off the land. They knew how to protect themselves and build community together. They knew how, the seasons changed and how we had to, when seed time comes and harvest time comes, like, we always knew these things. It's instinctively in us. It's in our blood. We've always managed our resources effectively. We knew how to store, food and goods and hunter and gather and all those things. We knew how to do those to take care of ourselves and support our communities. We always know how to do good for others. And again, that's why I say it's okay to build wealth. And I think at the end of the day, if you learn how money works, if you have any money, I mean, I'm not even saying, again, a definition of wealth or riches, it's all individualized to you. It's not, my definition of being rich could be different from anyone else's. But no matter what that is for you, we can always take that to give back to our communities. We can always use that to build future wealth for future generations. And I don't think anything is wrong with that. I don't know. I just have the need to include this conversation because, again, we have it in our minds, like, capitalism and being a business owner and making money and having money is a bad thing. And it's not. But, and I do get that it's related to, historical trauma that we may or may not have. And maybe we don't know how to get over that, but again, I hope with education, you'll see that I can do good things to not only help myself, but my family and my community. All right. So the thing I also want to touch on is the importance of professional guidance. I find that, again, Native peoples, they don't want to talk to a lot of people about their money. They don't want to seek help, but they know they need the help, but they're like, I don't want them in my business. I find that we don't like trusting non-natives in our business also. I think it's important to seek professional guidance, just like in any area of your life. When you're needing some legal help and you got to go to a court, who do we go to? We go to an attorney or a lawyer. If if you're trying to get in shape and lose weight, we go to like personal trainers and dietitians. If you're sick and you need help overcoming your medical diagnosis, then we go to, medical professionals. I think the same thing with our finances. We should seek professional guidance with our finances. And the reason being is because, especially, we don't know what we don't know. And I think I'm talking about that in a little bit. But when you have somebody on the outside kind of looking in and helping you, they're able to look at your situation objectively, because like for us, it's either black or white. The numbers are there or they're not, and we know how to get there. There's the bridge and gap that we can close. Whereas you individually, or when we're handling our finances by ourselves, we're emotional, right? We make emotional decisions. So having a professional who can help you and just, help you stay on track is super important. We have so many native CDFIs, community development financial institutions, that we can go to. I mean, I wish there was a local native CDFI in the Chicagoland area. There isn't. I want to start one. But I wish there was, because they have so many resources. I mean, I'm on all these CDFIs emails, and they have resources and workshops and financial coaching, and they have different loan programs. They have so many financial resources that folks can use that tribal members can take advantage of. I used to do, I sit on a couple of nonprofit boards, and one of the biggest frustrations is like, we're trying to give so much to the community, and people just don't take advantage of those resources. One question I also get too is, well, Shantae, I would like to work with maybe a native financial professional or a financial advisor. How do I find them? Well, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a social media network. It's supposed to be a professional network of, folks all across the country. With me being a Native woman in the financial literacy space, and, all the professional licenses I hold, I'm so happy to see more and more Native financial professionals across the country who, are doing the work that I do similarly. And they're out there trying to champion financial education as well. So I'll offer, my information at the end of the webinar as a resource to stay connected. But if you want to find someone local to you, I think LinkedIn is a great source. You can literally put in the search bar, Native financial advisor, Native financial professional near me, something like that. I don't know, kind of use it like a Google search feature, and reach out to folks. Reach out to 2 or 3, 4 people who, and ask them, can they help you? What type of, financial planning services they offer you. So I think it's super important to seek professional guidance. So moving on, I think I just want to go through a couple things, and I'm gonna get into some strategies. I'm gonna get into some specific strategies, but again, I just had to talk about these things. Financial education is key. Just like being educated any other way, no one can take financial education from you. We don't know what we don't know. Sometimes it's easy to get tricked, because we live in such a information age. The technology is everywhere. We can Google almost anything. And what I know is that you can be misled, and you might not know it. You can be deceived. Especially, with all these expert, non-experts who are on social media. And, it seems like there's an expert, non-expert everywhere on every topic. They can misinform you because they're not true professionals in the field. We don't know what we don't know. But when you're financially educated, at least you have a starting place. Like, I'm going to share with you some very specific strategies today. I think even if you don't implement anything, you will know, like, you'll have a baseline education to be able to pinpoint, that sounds right. No, that doesn't sound right. No matter how limited your resources are, you can apply financial concepts and apply them. I was teaching a workshop last week at an organization, a nonprofit, and, a young lady in the class, it was a class of 30 women from a range of like early 20s to like, I don't know, 50 or so. And a young lady was like, Shantae, I can't do anything. I'm broke. I don't have income. I don't have Like, I have so much debt. And I was like, wait a minute. That won't be your life forever. That's just a point in time. I'm sorry that you're going through that. I'm sure it's not easy. But even when you get any little bit of money, because you have the education, you'll know exactly what to do with it. You'll know what not to do with it. And that's something that's super key. When I talk to folks, I'm like, every dollar should have a job. But if you don't know what the job is, because you don't have the education, you can't apply it. So it's super important. No matter how limited your resources are, it doesn't take a lot to get started. Just get started. Start small. Even if it's just $5 a month, like, if that's literally all someone has extra, then just get in the habit of putting that $5 a month. It's about building the habit. It's about building good financial, like a good financial to-do list. I'm going to do these things no matter what. When I get the money, if I don't have it, I know exactly what to do. I'm not going to blow it and go spend it and waste it. That's such a huge key difference. And there's never no perfect time to do better with your finances. Sometimes we feel like, well, wait until my debt is paid off, or wait until I make more money, or wait until my kids go off to college or something like that. Then I'll do better with my finances. Then I'll be able to save. Then I'll be able to do whatever. Take action. Just make informed decisions. You don't have to. There's no perfect time. I mean, anytime I thought my life was perfect and everything was in order, like literally the next day, it was gone. Just get started and start taking action. All right, guys. So the first resource that I wanted to offer that Brooke mentioned is an ebook that this company that I work with, they have a free ebook. It's called Change Your Literacy, Change Your Life. I think somebody downloaded it right before I got on before the webinar started. And it's 3 versions of this ebook. Because have you ever heard the secret? I'm sorry, not the secret. Have you ever heard the quote? If you want a secret, put it in your book. Put it in a book. That's same thing with like finances and education. We came out with this ebook recently, actually within the past year, to give folks an opportunity just to understand just financial conversations. Yeah, it was you, Mariah. Okay, she outed herself. We wanted to give folks an understanding of, like, from different life perspectives of, if I am older or I'm about to retire, what should I be concerned about? If I am, if I'm a college student, what should I be considering? If I'm a single mom, or if I have a disabled child at home, just different areas. I love the ebook. There's 3 different versions of it. We have the TLDR, too long, don't read. It's 2 pages. And then there's a 20-page version, which is like a good overview. And then we have a longer page version. I think it's almost 80 pages. So I would encourage folks to, download it. It's the first free resource, again, just to get financially educated. Thank you, Mariah. She says she's ready to read it more in depth. I'm glad you took a look at that. And I want to just, again, offer that free resource, and stay tuned, because I'm going to offer some more other free resources for you all throughout actually toward the end of the presentation. So hopefully you don't have to log off too soon, but obviously you got the recording and everything and anything else. But when we think about managing our finances, I always tell folks, like, we just need a roadmap. We want to do better. We just don't know how. I teach and educate folks about this process called the 7 money milestones, which is, literally, how do I get from point A to point B? How do I improve my finances? What do I even need to look at? In your head, it might be, let me just pay down my debt. But I'm like, hold on, we got a lot of more things to do. We got to talk about investing, or, setting up a trust. There's so many things. So when it comes to these 7 money milestones, and I'll just go through a quick description of each. My overall opinion is that when I'm talking to folks and helping them with their finances, my honest belief is that if you look at every single milestone and do something about each money milestone, you will actually set yourself up in a very, very stable position financially, or you'll be getting yourself stabilized financially. And I think it's super important for tribal members to make sure that, again, I'm trying to have a conversation of folks who get per cap, who don't get per cap, who work for a living, who don't, whatever. I think it's just important to help tribal communities understand, like, no matter where you are in life, no matter what your financial resources, you can still look at all 7 of these areas. And when I mentioned earlier, every dollar should have a job, this is what I'm talking about. So let me just go through these real quickly, and then I'm going to give you some specific strategies that I think would optimize each milestone. So milestone number 1, which I talked about already, is just becoming financially educated. You have the ebook if you haven't downloaded it yet. And, if it makes sense to engage a financial professional. So I talked all about that for the first 25 minutes here. Milestone number 2 is proper protection. So anytime I use that word protection, just what does that mean? We're protecting something, right? What if we're protecting our income? We're protecting our livelihoods. And in the idea of protection, I'm actually referring to life insurance. I'm protecting my family, myself, others against anything happening to me prematurely. And I get it, tribal communities, depending on, like, I'm from the Navajo Nation, they don't like talking about death. It's actually very, very taboo. But it happens. It will. And we just don't want to see people struggle financially because of someone's unexpected passing. And if you're in a tribe where they take care of the member, those final expenses, great. I don't know what every tribe does. My tribe doesn't, so I want to make sure that I have plenty of life insurance in place. But also, in this milestone, we're talking about, do we have health insurance, long-term care insurance, disability insurance? Luckily, I think, we have IHSs, Indian Health Services, that can provide a lot of that healthcare aspect to us. Even in Chicago, we have an IHS here. So I think from that perspective, our tribes are doing a really good job of taking care of us in that regard. But when it comes to life insurance, that's a different conversation. So I'll touch on that a little bit. Milestone number 3 is an emergency fund. We always hear that, always hear it. If you need to have some money set aside for the emergencies, which is so true. Emergencies always come up. The goal is 3 to 6 months of income. I think that's really hard to do. It is. Is that ideal? Yes. And the reasoning is because the thought, the mindset behind that is, if you were to lose your job, and this is like the worst case scenario, would you be able to pay your bills for the next 3 to 6 months while you are looking for new work and trying to get another job? That's ideally what the emergency fund is supposed to be there for. And then obviously, if you're preparing for unexpected expenses, like your catalytic converter going out of your vehicle, I was like, man, I could have bought a new car with that. It was the biggest emergency fund expense I had, but I don't have any other vehicles. I had to get it fixed. So anyway, having that emergency fund, and I'm actually going to talk about specifically for an emergency fund an alternative to using the bank, because I think when they have an emergency fund, they just use their savings account at the bank, and I think that's too easy to dip into. Let me hold that conversation for a couple more slides. Milestone number 4 is debt management. We all know that, like, you're never financially free if you owe someone. When you have a debt, you owe someone. So we'll talk about, changing spending habits, really looking at, how can we free up extra money to pay off debt, but how can we strategically pay down debt? Don't just throw extra money at every credit card. How do we do it strategically? Milestone number 5 is improving your cash flow. Sometimes it's just, first of all, I hate using the word budget. I know other financial practitioners, native financial practitioners, say have a spending plan. What are my daily living expenses, my rent, my mortgage, my household, utilities, food, and things that I need for my home. What are those expenses? Because everything else out of those basic living expenses is a want. I want to pay for Netflix. I want to go and buy shoes and shopping, all that. Sometimes we just need to make more money. Sometimes folks I very rarely come into situations where people are just like shopping till they drop and they just blow money all the time. Every dollar they get, they just spend it. I very rarely see that situation. Most folks just need more money coming in. They just have a lot of responsibilities. They just need more extra income. We'll talk about that in a second. Building wealth. This is, I call it the sexy side of money, because this is where we're talking about like getting into investing in the stock market, understanding, taxes, and what if the market drops. We heard of Liberation Day on April 4th a couple weeks ago, and that was when our president had announced these tariffs. And then the market went down 10%, and people were freaking out. They're like, "Oh my God, what do I do? I should sell. I should sell for no reason, just because the media is making me scared about this." Anyway, when you're financially educated, you don't bat an eye at those things. And then milestone number 7 is protecting wealth. What can I do to where I can leave a legacy? I think in our native cultures, we want to leave a legacy. We're built on the backbones of our ancestors and their blood and everything they went through. Why would we not want to do what we can to preserve future generations and create some sustainability in our communities? So when I look at applying these 7 money milestones, I try to figure out, okay, how can I make folks' life simple? And in my 20 plus years of doing this type of work, I found my most successful clients are automatically saving their money. Automatically. What do I mean by automatically? Meaning you have an account, you have something set up, and every time you get paid, not every time, but when you get paid, there's an automatic transaction happening. You're automatic, it's not you go and put money in separately in your own. It's automatically done. We have it to where the money is saving and pulling out of your bank account automatically to go to a certain financial strategy. And when I was thinking about all these milestones, I said, man, what could tribal people do at a minimum, at a bare bones minimum, to help themselves get forward? I've been in several leadership roles, my last 10 years or so. And some of the most frustrating part is when you want to help people, but they don't know how to help themselves. And when it comes to finances, again, when folks are educated and if they do minimal things, they don't always have to go and rely on someone else. They don't have to go and seek someone or something or our tribe or whoever to take care of them. And so I was going through all 7 money milestones. I said, you know what? I'm going to identify something for each milestone. If every tribal member did this, there will be true generational wealth created. There will be some sustainability created. And so I want to go through each one, starting with milestone number 2. I have apply for life insurance. And then I want to go through each one and I'll kind of break down why did I, come up with that strategy. And moving forward, I'm not trying to convince you to do any of this. I'm not. I just want to educate people about why, as a financial professional, where if I felt that people manage their money in this way, it would be so much better financially, so much better off financially. So again, I don't want no one construing this as me making a sales pitch or trying to convince anything. I'm just educating you, okay? All right, so milestone number 2, proper protection. I talked about it being life insurance. Again, my apologies in advance. I'm not trying to disrespect anyone because we don't like talking about death. As Native people, most of our tribes don't like it, but it happens. We don't know the date and time and hour when we will leave this earth and, go on our journey. We don't know. And so life insurance is to protect against when that will happen. Not if, when, and I think most people, if we don't have life insurance, it's because, one, we just think it costs too much. We're not really educated on what it is and how it works. But if we understand life insurance means if someone passes away, your beneficiary, who you'll name, will receive a check. They'll receive a check of a death benefit that will be paid out to them. And that benefit will get to them tax-free. And they can do whatever they want with that money. Hopefully, take care of your final expenses and take care of the family. And most people don't get it because they think it'll cost too much. They underestimate how much it'll cost. They underestimate how much they need in coverage, but also they overestimate how much it'll cost. And that will really stop folks from just getting the protection in place. And if people do have some life insurance, if they have a policy on their own, they don't have enough. They're underinsured, meaning, there's a calculation, that you should use, at least as a general rule of thumb, to determine, well, how much should I have? And I'll just also say this too, like I don't believe in depending on our job, our workplace, because some employers, it's a good benefit if they do offer it. Sometimes they do offer a life insurance benefit that you might be able to pay for, or it's automatic. I don't depend on that, because it's, what if you lose your job? There goes that coverage as well. So I always recommend coverage outside of, the workplace. And like I mentioned, even though it's taboo to talk about these things, it will happen. It's inevitable. Life insurance, in my opinion, is one of the few ways to turn pennies into thousands of dollars. When we think again, I guess your quote unquote wealthy families, and how did they get rich? How do they stay rich from generation to generation? A lot of the way they do that is through having life insurance policies. So let's say your great grandfather had a life insurance policy. That death benefit pays out to your grandfather. He gets, similar life insurance. It pays out to parents. Your parents pass away. That money comes down to you. It just passes on through the generations. And in each generation, they also get policies of their own. It's the cheapest way, literally, to become instant, millionaires, depending on how much life insurance is actually purchased. You, at the end of the day, you are your greatest asset to your family. So protect it. When I think about, if I buy a new car, to drive it off the lot, I have to have a car insurance policy. When I'm buying a new home, depending on where I live and the type of mortgage I have, because I don't have any equity in the home, I have to have mortgage protection insurance, which is to protect the lender. By the way, it's not to protect your family, it's protect you if you can't pay the, lender. Why are there no laws or no government requirement to where I need to protect my income to take care of my family? And I'm my greatest asset to my family. Me personally, so I'm a divorced mom of 3. I take care of my children by myself. I maintain our household together. If something happened to me, like, I want my children to maintain the same lifestyle. I want them to have, I don't want them to have to lose the home or anything because I'm no longer here. And that's one of the benefits of life insurance. One, I don't think life insurance is optional. To me, I don't look at life insurance, and I pay for like 6 policies, by the way, probably closer to 9 policies, actually, if I actually count them all up. I don't think it's optional. I don't look at those policies as an extra bill or an extra expense that, like, oh, I don't need that. It's not optional, because if something happens to me, my family would be able to maintain themselves and the lifestyle that I created for them. And I think with tribal members, I can't tell you how many Native families I've seen where they lost the breadwinner, they passed away, the breadwinner passed away, and the family is financially devastated. I'm talking about financially devastated to where they can't maintain the home. They have to move in with relatives. They have to relocate, like, financially devastated because that breadwinner income is no longer there. I also think about leaving a legacy. Again, we talk about generational wealth, life insurance. It's one of the ways. I want to leave a legacy to where, my big goal in life is I want to become my family's bank. I don't want them to have to go to a bank and, get their credit check pulled or anything. I want them to come to me, like, hey, can I borrow money? Under some very key specific terms and conditions, I'm not going to be taken advantage of, but that's my big goal in life, right? That's legacy. I want my family members, future generations, to think, you know what, grandma, great-grandma, great-great-great-grandma Shantae did this for our family and completely transformed the rest of our lives. Also, some other benefits of life insurance is their living benefits. It's not just, at my demise, there's living benefits. Some policies, you can grow cash inside of them. They have long-term care benefits. Some, the way, depending on how it's structured, there could be benefits if you became chronically or critically ill, where you could possibly pull some cash out of the policy. So you can basically reduce your death benefit and get some of that money early. There's so many benefits. I mean, I could spend an hour or two just talking about life insurance. I think too, we've seen an over reliance on, crowdfunding. When people pass away, GoFundMe is not a replacement for life insurance. And again, I'm not here to disrespect anyone. I know people who've had to do this, and I'm not saying if you might have had to do it to your family or selling taco plates and things like that. It's unfortunate that the family has to go to those extremes in a time of mourning and bereavement, just to pay for those final expenses. It's not expensive to leave money behind. And it's just something that I think tribal members, we just don't have these conversations. So we don't even consider it. We don't even consider, like, do we have life insurance? Mom and dad, do you have life insurance? Because if something happens to you, I'm going to be the one responsible for it. And I'm already over here struggling. So we got to have the conversations. We really do. I wanted to talk about, I mentioned applying for life insurance and the type of, policy or the type of life insurance I think most people should apply for is called term life insurance. There's two categories of life insurance. You have temporary, also known as term, or permanent. I'm not going to talk about permanent, and the reason why I'm not is because it's more expensive, it's more involved, too complicated. Like, I'm thinking of people who are just getting started, just trying to get their life in order and finances in order. Applying for a term life insurance policy is pretty straightforward and easy to do. So just like it shows here on the screen, we're providing life insurance protection for a period of time. It could be a 10-year period, 20-year period, 30-year period. And in between that time frame that you have, you will have protection. Think of it like car insurance, right? We buy car insurance like every 6 months, right? We have to renew our policy. But during that 6 months, if something happens to the car and I'm in an accident, I have protection. Term insurance is kind of that way. During that time, if something happens to me, meaning, i.e., I pass away, my family will receive the death benefit from that policy. Now, because it's only protection for a period of time, it's very, very, very inexpensive, especially if you're only doing like 10 years. It's very inexpensive because you're only basically paying for coverage for that 10-year period of time. And I don't believe in just like having life insurance, only term life insurance. I think it's an excellent strategy to use as we get started in life. So a couple, elements here about term life insurance. If you have a low budget, so again, I'm trying to think of folks who are just getting started. They're trying to figure out their finances. If you have a low budget, like, I don't have a lot to pay for life insurance, Shantae, but I think I need it. You have a huge need. This would be a great strategy to look at, because you also can get the maximum amount of protection at the lowest cost. After that term ends, if you keep that policy beyond that term, the cost will go up, because you're locking in, basically, when we're getting, protection for that time period, we're locking in the cost. So I'm a 40-year-old woman. If I'm 40 years old and I were to get a term policy now, I'm basically locking in the cost of my insurance, cost of insurance as a 40-year-old woman, and based on my health status. But once that term is ending, let's say I got a 30-year term, now I'm 70 years old. And if I thought I was going to keep that policy, now the insurance company is going to say, okay, now we're going to charge you as a 70-year-old woman moving forward, and then 71. And every year that cost will go up. So most people don't plan to have like term insurance indefinitely, typically only for that period of time. I like to, especially for folks who have minor children, you have a huge responsibility. You have the biggest responsibility is to take care of these kids and raise them and have the money available for them. So having that plan in place until you're, having a term policy rather in place until your children at least become of adult age and they're taking care of themselves should be a good amount of time as far as how long of a term. So for example, the last term policy I bought, my son is my youngest. He was 4 at the time, and I bought a 30-year term. And my thinking was, okay, I have this policy. I'm starting it when my son is 4. 30 years later, he'll be 34. If something happens to me between him being 4 years old and 34, he'll be one of the ones to get part of that death benefit. But after that 30-year term, I don't need it anymore. My kids are adults. They're taking care of themselves. I don't need that protection in place So they will be fine. I'll still have other protection, but I won't necessarily need this big term life insurance policy. If you have a lot of debt, you definitely want to consider term life insurance. And what do I mean by debt? Let's say you have a mortgage. I mean, do you want your house to be sold after you pass away, or do you want it to be maintained and kept for your family, your children and family? If you have credit cards, a lot of folks don't, I don't know if you realize, especially if someone passes away, which I'll talk about later, with like without a will and without proper protection in place. Part of a probate process, which is going through the courts, is to have a public notice intended to notify creditors that you passed away. And a creditor can then make claim to your assets because they're like, oh, well, Shantae owed me $10,000 on my Capital One credit card. So if she had any money left, I should get paid first. And the judge will order that person, that debtor, that debt collector, whoever, to get paid. Does it happen all the time? No. No one can come after you. Like if your loved one passed away, no one can come after you for their debts unless you were a co-obligator on that debt. If you're a single person, some people are like, well, I don't have kids. I'm only 20 years old. What do I need life insurance for? Because maybe you might have kids in the future. You might have a family. You'll probably have debts. You want to qualify for it while you're young and healthy. That's the cheapest. Like I literally have some young 20-year-olds I'm working with right now, and their quote for a term life insurance is like $10 a month. I'm like, you could spit that out and waste it in a day. You had $10 to buy some term life insurance. You have access to those living benefits, like I mentioned earlier. And if if your situation is better, it improves, and you start making more money, you start getting more financially stabilized, you can actually convert your term policy to a permanent plan, which will cost more. And what do we mean by convert? And then meaning that the insurance company will take your current health rating and status and apply it to the new policy. So you basically don't have to re-qualify for it. So that's my first strategy. Guys, if you have questions, please put in the chat. If I need to break down anything or make something more clear, please let me know. Let's talk about money milestone number 3. I'm going to kind of speed it up a little bit just to be mindful of time. So here we're talking about building an emergency fund. Here, again, we always hear that idea of having 3 to 6 months of your income in emergency fund, which, like I mentioned earlier, that's hard to do. If you make $50,000 a year, that's saying, oh, you should have $12,500 sitting in some account. That's a lot of cash sitting on the side. And keep that in mind. If you're going to have this emergency fund, my personal perspective is that money should still be growing for you. Just because it's, for emergencies doesn't mean it shouldn't be growing. That's thousands and thousands of dollars that should still be doing something, should still be working for you. And so what do I look at? Again, I don't necessarily like the word emergency fund. I like rainy day funds. Research other places to put your money, in particular high yield savings account options. I like going to credit unions in particular because they typically offer those higher interest rate accounts versus a normal big bank. Online savings accounts also typically offer higher interest rates. If you find a place or financial institution that has money market accounts, money market is equivalent to cash that just earns a little higher interest. And then you can even have an investment account open. Yes, an investment account, invested in the stock market, but they use money market funds inside the investment. So it's actually, it's not necessarily going up and down with the market. It's just a money market fund. So again, pretty much equivalent to cash, but you're getting a higher interest rate. I'm not here to make any specific recommendations. I don't believe in this part, which is using your normal savings account that's tied to your checking account. And the reason is because it's too easy to access. Like, it's too easy to log into your phone app and be like, you know what? I think I want to pull out 500, boom, and transfer it to my checking account. It's too easy to do. It's too easy. You want your money in an account separate from your bank where you put in a request and it takes a day or two to get back to your bank, because then that'll give you some time to think about, do I really, really need this money? Do I really need this purchase? Like, what am I pulling this money out for? Is it a true emergency, or is it just because I want a vacation or something like that? So I think of having that emergency fund not so accessible is ideal for folks. But then also have a sunny day fund. Like, we don't talk about just saving money for things that I really like to enjoy. Because I'm not that financial professional that'll tell you stop getting your coffee in the morning and your $5 Dunkin' Donuts and, Starbucks. Do you, boo? Okay? Just budget for it. Like, I don't think it's anything wrong with having, doing something nice for yourself. Like, we're all struggling financially. We're already stressed out to the max, anxious, like worried, up at night, can't sleep, and just like worried. Just, it's okay to do things, budget for things you enjoy. The key word is just budget for it. Just account for it. I think we do too many things we enjoy, and it's out of, it's an impulse. It's not actually prepared or planned for. Like, for example, myself, my biggest budget expense is eating out, hands down, by far. I was just looking at my statements on Sunday. I normally do a reset every week. I check where my balance is at, all this stuff. And I'm like, man, Shantae, you ate out like 4 days this week, maybe 5. You need to cook more. And then I felt bad because I'm like, I should be cooking dinner for the kids. But then I have the excuse, I'm a busy single mom, whatever. I'm okay with eating out because I budget for it. I don't necessarily buy clothes. I'm not a shoe person. I don't buy jewelry. I mean, maybe if I go to powwows, I can overindulge. I should have put that on here, but it's so hard not to buy new earrings and stuff. But I typically, in other areas of my life, I don't spend my money. So I say, okay, if I spend my money, it's eating out. Yeah, Mariah's like me too. But personal care, like, it's okay to get your hair done, your nails done, your eyelashes, haircuts. I'm not just talking to the women here. Men, you guys take care of yourselves that way either. What if you actually hit a goal? What if you actually, like, I don't know, paid down one small credit card? Maybe it was a $200 balance. Like, reward yourself. Not with a lavish, re-spending that credit card or whatever, but a small reward. I think sometimes we make managing our money so boring and harsh. Instead of using your emergency fund for travel and gifts, have your sunny day fund for that. That way you don't feel bad about using the money. So if in my sunny day fund there's $100, I can spend it on whatever I want. And guess what? I won't feel bad about it. We got to stop, doing better with our finances, not about, hitting our hand like, oh, don't spend that. Don't do that. It's not about that. We can have fun with it as well. Put it in the chat. What would you spend your sunny day money on? And like I said, mine is eating out. I love a good steak. I don't go to steakhouses often, but if I were to spend, I would definitely buy a good steak dinner somewhere. All right. While you're sharing with the world, if you want, what your sunny day money would be doing, let's talk about milestone number 4, which is debt management. So milestone number 4 is, we know we got to pay down our debt, right? We definitely want to pay it off wisely. Oh, hold on. Somebody said eating out or massage. I actually just got a massage for the first time in like 10 years. I was like, I need to budget for this to happen once a month. Movies and snacks at the movies. Yep. I just took my son to see Minecraft and somehow spent like over $40 on a whole bunch of other stuff not related to the movie. Totally get it. But guess what? Sunny day money. I could do that. I can take care of my kids and do something, because our kids are, I don't take them into Target with me no more, because somehow they end up getting stuff too. All right, let's talk about getting rid of debt, because our kids will put us in debt for sure. But I want folks to think about paying down debt wisely. We all know we need to pay down debt. Sometimes people, and this is the number one concern folks bring to me. as a financial professional is, how do I pay down my debt? I want to get out of debt. Okay, let's think about it. Let's do it wisely. First of all, we got to get it out of our head that I need to pay everything all at once. No, one debt at a time. That's the strategy we want to talk about. One debt at a time. If you, let's say you have 5 credit cards, choose your smallest credit card debt, and any extra money that you have, put it to that smallest credit card debt. Everything else, though, we're still going to pay. We're just going to make minimum payments on all those other 4 credit cards. But that one credit card, that one smallest credit card, any extra money you have, put it to that one small one, make minimum payments. This is called the debt snowball method, because what happens is that you accumulate money to pay off one debt quick. So let's say you pay off that first credit card. You know, it was $200 balance. It's been a little pain in your butt for a long time. Boom, it's gone. I finally got rid of that stupid $200 credit card. I don't now I don't have 5 credit cards. I have only 4. That's when you can have, you know, a little reward with your sunny day money. But then now that one credit card is paid off, take that extra money that you were applying to the first one, and now we apply it to the next credit card, you know, and just repeat the cycle over and over. So there's really 2 ways to do this. This is from Investopedia, either debt avalanche or debt snowball. So what I talked about was just debt snowball. You basically look at all your debts. First of all, like, open up your statements, open up your mail, download your statements. I mean, everything is so electronic now. We don't even get our statements in the mail anymore, but just start itemizing, put them in order. Okay, Chase, I owe $5,000. What's the interest rate? What's the minimum payment? What's the due date? Every debt that you have, itemize it, put it in order. And then you could start looking at, you know, if we do debt snowball, we're looking at balances. So you're paying the smallest balance off first, and then you just move on to the next one. Or you could use what we call debt avalanche. That means we're looking at interest rates, because we know the higher the interest rate, the more that debt will keep accumulating before it's actually paid off. So some people are like just trying to cut the bleeding, like stop the bleeding. The bleeding is your interest that you're being charged on the debt. So, you know, you can use a debt avalanche strategy, which says, okay, I'm not looking at balances, but I'm going to look at which card has the highest interest rate, and I'm going to pay that debt down first. And then I'll move on to the next card with the next highest interest rate, and, you know, do it that way. Whichever way you do it, you will pay off your debt quicker. I even teach a workshop called Velocity Banking. That's like bringing it up to another level. But the rule of thumb is, don't try to pay everything at once. The biggest mistake I see is people are trying to pay down their debt, but they're throwing like $100 here, $100 at that one, and $100 at this one. No, put all 300 on one card and one debt, and you'll be surprised how much quicker you'll see your debt pay off quicker. How much quicker you'll be able to pay off your debt. All right, let's go to milestone number 5, increasing cash flow. Now look, it's a reality again. I don't see a whole lot of people who are overspending their money, so to speak. We just need to make more money. We live in a gig economy. What does that mean? You know, most people in addition to their jobs, or maybe they don't have a full-time job, just have a bunch of part-time things they're doing. Whatever. There's no judgment here. I have I really counted up. I probably have like 4 or 5 sources of income. You know, financial education is my primary, you know, livelihood, but I do taxes, I do all type of stuff and I monetize it, where I make money from those things. So, I mean, why not? Why would I just depend on one job? I mean, I'm not saying you don't have to. First, let me take it back. I'm not saying that you shouldn't or shouldn't have to. If you're in a great company, great employer, great. But again, what can else? Some people need extra cash flow to pay off their debt and get their finances in order. This is what I'm talking about. So having that side gig, 45% of U.S. workers, 45, almost half of U.S. workers have a side gig, and they earn an average $1,100 extra per month. That is so cool to me, where you're literally making like an extra paycheck per month just doing something on the side. It could be like Uber or Instacart, or, you know, selling goods on Etsy, whatever you do. start a business. Entrepreneurship is huge, and especially Native women. I think the statistics said that it's either Native women or I'm not Native, or Black women. One of those categories of women, period. We start so many businesses in our country and create jobs in our economy. You could start a business doing some entrepreneurship, something part-time. That's how I got into this industry, actually. Well, I'm sorry, with this company. Well, part of my work that I do with financial education, I was actually in I guess working with a big investment company. And then I had started to hear about financial education, and I started it part-time on the side, like nights and weekends, and then started making more money doing this than my corporate job, and I ended up quitting it. Thank you so much for putting in chat, Brooke. I did do a recording for Velocity Banking, the quickest way to pay off debt. So just takes it. Thank you for sharing that. Native Learning Center is so awesome. They have so many good resources, and they record everything. Also, if you are an employee at your employer, adjust your W-2 allowances, which means that, I don't know if you remember when you were like signing up your benefits and your direct deposit, and they sent you, I think it's a W-9 form, not W-9. It's an exemption form. It basically says you give them a number and it tells the company how much taxes to take out of your paycheck. You could put in between 0 and 99. And that's it's adjusting your W-2 allowances. So the higher the number, the less in taxes get taken out and comes to you in your paycheck. So when I was working like corporate America, I would actually I would put 99, the highest number, because I didn't want no taxes taken out. I wanted all my money to my paycheck. Now, you got to be it's a little tricky because you also don't want to be owing taxes at the end of the year. So you got to kind of like find that balance. But if you typically get a tax refund, like I said, it's tax day today. If you typically get a refund, it's because you've been paying too much in taxes throughout the year. So you can adjust those allowances to get a little bit money back. But Native people, let's think about what can we do? Turn your passion into profits. When I teach my education workshops for youth, and I talk to them about being an entrepreneur, the business owner, I always tell them, you know what? Solve a big problem, find a problem and solve it, and you'll make money. You'll make a lot of money. I want somebody to create an app that takes me out of group text. Somebody create an app for that. You'll make so much money. But find a problem and solve it. But what skills or talents do we have that you can monetize, that you can barter and trade, just like our ancestors have always done? I mean, cooking, beading, regalia making. Are you a knowledge keeper? I consider myself a financial literacy expert, knowledge keeper. Are you a language teacher? Can you teach your language and monetize it? Create digital courses or templates. What are you an expert at? I think most Native people have some type of level of expertise, and you just don't know it. You don't recognize it. Like, depending on where you are and where you live, you could be an expert of the land. You could be an expert of, I don't know, plants in your area, or some cultural teaching or value. I mean, and obviously, let's be respectful, because we don't want to, what do they call it? Like, not take advantage of. We want to be mindful of our cultural practices and not using them for our personal gain. You guys know what I'm talking about. But like, for example, one of my cousins, he's a hand drum maker. And I was like, cousin, do you're like an expert at this? You should be charging people to make hand drums. And I mean, obviously there's a lot more to, drumming and singing as well. But he was like, yeah, I know that he does charge. He was like, but I charge so much less than what I should. And I'm like, you should. Like, how many times have we seen people just drop like $400 or $500 on something? I'm like, your drums are worth at least $500. They're custom made. You put so much love into them. Like, he dyes all the hides, all this stuff. And they come out really well. When they post videos of unboxing his drums. I'm like, dude, you should be like monetizing this a lot more. Like, I'll help you. But anyway, find your passion and turn it into a profit. It doesn't have to be, you don't need, like, sometimes we think in our head, if I do become an entrepreneur, like I need a website, I need a location, I need a logo. No, you don't. Oh my God, are you kidding me? You just need like a Cash App, a Facebook social media page, and post up pictures. Literally, people are getting rich off of using their cell phone. This is all they use. But anyway, that's a whole nother class. Let's move on to milestone number 6 so we can start wrapping this up. Building wealth. Now, one thing I talked about in the beginning that was a huge, scary statistic. And also, while I'm going on to this, if you have a passion you want to turn into profit, put it in the chat. Sorry, sometimes I forget to. If you have questions, feel free to put in the chat. Is this helpful? I hope this is helpful, because our tribal people can do all this stuff. All right, so let's just think about building wealth. Remember how my earlier statistic that I said was scary was how very few people, was this 33% of people have less than, let me go back to my notes here. I should know that slide by heart. Yeah, 33% of Americans have zero retirement savings. And I think for the most part, when it comes to building wealth and starting to get into the stock market game, the type of account that most anyone it typically makes sense for is a Roth IRA. Again, not advice, I'm not giving financial advice, but 95% of the population, this makes sense for. Anyone who earns an income, even your teenager, they earn income from, a paycheck, not cash under the table. Like they actually have a paycheck that they go in cash and they're paying taxes. If you have what we call reportable income, reportable to the IRS income, anyone can open a Roth IRA. And what is this? So it's an investment account for retirement, to save money for retirement. So what can our tribal members do to prepare for their own retirement? This is an investment account. Again, as long as they have income, they can open a Roth. And the IRS says, because the IRS manages every single account we have open, but when it comes to money, the IRS says that you cannot withdraw any money out until you're age 59 and a half. Or else, if you do, you're going to pay a 10% penalty and taxes. But otherwise, if you don't touch this money until you're in retirement, you actually pay no taxes. It's one of the few retirement options that's completely tax-free. And that's why a lot of people open it, because they want to avoid paying taxes in the future. So your cash goes in, money out your paycheck. It's invested. This is an investment account. So whatever platform you open it with, they might invest in mutual funds, exchange traded funds, ETFs. I like UITs, which are unit investment trusts. They might have stocks that you can buy, whatever it is, you just invest that money. And while that money is invested and growing, you're not paying taxes on it, which is great. So think of like seed time harvest. While it's growing to that big harvest, you're not paying taxes. And then when you pull the money out, you take the money out tax-free. So it doesn't take a lot to get this type of plan started. Again, sometimes we have it in our head that, well, I need thousands of dollars or hundreds of dollars. No. Depending on the platform, you can some investment platforms. And again, I can't make recommendations on the webinar, but some investment platforms I've seen, you can start with as little as a $10 deposit. And it's not like $10 every week or every month, just a one-time $10 deposit, and they'll start investing your money. Now, obviously, you're going to only be successful if you keep making deposits. But I mean, again, just like the term life insurance, $10, like I could blow that on eating out real quick. Same thing with like planning for my retirement. Can we teach our tribal members to just start getting in the habit of putting just a little bit, just $10, just put it a little bit away? You can open a Roth with your bank. Sometimes your bank will offer a Roth IRA. There's a lot of phone apps. Again, I can't make recommendations. I'm not here to promote anything, But there's a lot of phone apps that you can download. They use what's called a robo-advisor. What is a robo-advisor meaning? You're not working with a person. It's more of an algorithm-based platform. And they, you kind of tell them how old you are you aggressive, like what's your risk tolerance, and then they'll choose your investments for you automatically. So that's a easy way to get started. Or a financial advisor. I open Roth IRAs all the time for my clients. So those are kind of like, where would you open this type of account? And again, 95% of the population can't go wrong with this type of strategy. You can only put in up to $7,000 per year. So it's not like an account where you can just dump a whole lot of money. Like if that's your situation where you got a whole lot of extra money, the Roth, you can only put up to $7,000 per year. If you're over age 50, you can put in an extra $1,000. And then once you start making an income of around, I think I last checked it, around $146,000 if you're a single tax filer, the IRS is like, hold on now, you're getting to a point where you're starting to make too much money. We're going to start phasing out. We're going to start reducing how much you can contribute. And then it gets to a point where if you make, well over 6 figures, you can't contribute to a Roth at all. This is a plan where the IRS is trying to give U.S. taxpayers the opportunity to grow money for retirement and give them a lot of tax benefits in doing that. So Google Roth IRA, go check your bank, and see if that's something that might make sense. Again, I'm not telling you to do it. I'm just trying to share. Imagine all of our tribal members start saving for their retirement. We don't have to just depend only on Social Security or per cap or whatever you guys get as a benefit. Milestone number 7, then I'll wrap it up here. So milestone number 7 is protecting wealth. It makes no sense to do all those good things, make all those good decisions, by choice, if that's something you choose to do, and not protect our wealth. We got to start protecting our wealth. It's so easy, again, to have, as tribal people, to say, well, we lost everything. I mean, and we have, the U.S. government has did some things to our ancestors, but I don't like living in that victim mindset personally. I don't like living in a mindset of a deficit. I like to live in a mindset of abundance and thinking like, thank God for what I have today. How can I protect it? How can I build more for my children and future generations? That's just the perspective I like to take on it. But there are documents you can put in place, legal documents, to protect the little money you got, okay? And we should do this. Don't think that I don't have nothing, I'm broke, I don't need to do that. No, we all do. If you are an adult, 18 or older, if you're a legal adult, you have an estate that you should be protecting. I don't care if you got a bank account, anything that you own. If you have clothes on your back, I mean, if you have furniture in your home, you have things to protect. And I'm sure you want to go on to whoever you want to go on to. So these are 4 documents that should be considered in your plan. First is a will. A will is just a written document. It identifies, if you have minor children, if something happens to you, who will be the guardian of those children? Who do you want to be the guardian of your children? Especially if you have a special needs child. You'll also be able to name an executor of your estate, which means this person has the legal, I want this person to have the legal authority to handle all my financial affairs after I'm gone. And you can also identify your assets and how you want them distributed. For example, my bank account, I want whatever money's in my bank account to go to my oldest daughter. I want my car to go to this person. I want to give my jewelry and regalia to this person. You can identify exactly how you want those things to be distributed. And the reason why we put this stuff in writing is it helps your family not fight over this stuff, because sometimes they will fight over these things. But also, if you do have some decent assets, your family can go to a judge or court. And again, it's different on tribal lands. I will say that 100%. Tribal lands operate differently. Obviously, we operate our own nations how we want to. But if you're off of tribal lands like me, I have to go to the state of Illinois and the judge to deal with this. And the judge will, determine that is your last will and testament. It does not come into effect until you actually pass away. So this is you putting in advance all your wishes in writing, and then going through the probate process, like I mentioned earlier, is when a will is validated. So then a judge will say, okay, this is Shantae Moore's last will and testament. She named this person to be the executor of her estate. I'm going to give them what's called a letter of authority, and that person will have that signed, stamped letter from a judge, and they'll be able to go take that letter to your bank account, to your creditors, to whoever, to carry out whatever things they need to close your accounts and make sure that those assets are distributed. Now, most states, as far as what's a will, most states, and again, it depends on your resident state, where do you live, only they can actually have a document that's written out. You don't necessarily need a lawyer to do this. You could literally take a pen and paper, write out your wishes, have it witnessed, two witnesses sign your will. You've signed it in front of them. Two witnesses who do not benefit from your will, so like neighbors, friends, they'll sign as witness to your will, and then that'll be a legal document. I know you could do that in Illinois. There's a lot of states that will take that as a sufficient will. Of course, you can get an attorney to draft that for you. I tell folks, don't waste your money on like online websites to do it for you, where you got to pay the money. Don't do that. I'm gonna share a resource with you all, okay? The next document is a financial power of attorney. So this is a power of attorney is where you're giving someone control of your affairs while you are alive. Power of attorneys are only in effect while you are still alive. If you pass away, it's no longer, the authority is gone. It's no longer in effect. So a financial power of attorney is you give somebody the authority to handle your finances, when you can't do it yourself. So think of like our elders, our seniors. One, do not put your adult children as a co-bank account owner on your accounts. No, don't do that. And the reason why I say that is because if the adult child, let's say they have, I don't know, a lawsuit against them and they owe money to someone, they will come and seize that money out of that bank account because they're co-owner. Any asset they have will be up for grabs. Instead, have a financial power of attorney. It's a notarized document, and then somebody will be able to have that authority. Obviously, someone you know and trust who will not take advantage of you. Healthcare directives or living will. This is similar to a financial power of attorney. You have someone who can help make medical decisions for you when you cannot. They know what it would actually also identify like what medical treatments you want. Think of such scenarios where you're incapacitated, you're still alive, but you're incapacitated. You can't speak, you can't share what you want to happen in the hospital, but your living will, these documents will say, if this happens to me, then do this. Like do not resuscitate, like keep feeding me or don't feed me. Like, I know it's not fun to have those conversations, but these situations happen. They do happen where family members don't know what their loved one wants, in this dire medical situation. So let's just not get into this. Let's have it in writing. Let's have it in writing. And then you have a HIPAA release where someone can access your medical records. So if we don't have these things in place, if someone passes away without these, decisions in place, then now we're leaving it up to courts to make those decisions. We're leaving it up to our government to make those decisions that's going through the probate process. It'll cost you less to take care of these documents than to have your family pay for probate. That in itself is a whole 1-hour webinar. I want to wrap up real quickly and go through, offer a resource to you all. So I have a program that I work with where they'll give you all of those documents completely for free. You can scan this QR code. It's through one of my partners, where you can make your will, power of attorney. I'll come back here. Yeah, your last will and testament, your living will, a durable financial power of attorney at no cost. No cost. You go online. They'll ask you questions like, are you married? Are you divorced? Do you have children? Where do you live? Because it's all based on and they'll create all your documents based on your resident state, wherever you live. So I highly encourage folks to take advantage of that. You guys have the slides. You can go and do it later. And then the will only needs to be signed. The only document that needs to be notarized is the power of attorney. So take advantage of that. use you got to enter in my 5-digit referral code 26XCI, and then put in my email address, Shantae.moore@howmoneyworks.com. No cost to me. I'm sorry, no cost to you. I don't get anything from this at all. So just so you're aware, I don't get no compensation, nothing. It's just a free resource that I can offer folks that I am connected to because I'm a financial professional and I have the relationship with that organization. So take advantage of that. Again, here are your type of documents you'll get. So I'm going to wrap it up here. I went through when we talked about the money milestones and just all these different strategies that you can, take advantage of. I'm not telling you what to do. This isn't advice. But I hope that you at least have some ideas. And again, when I think if all of our tribal members did these things at a minimum, oh my God, so good. They'll be in such a good place financially and off to a good start. I hope you agree with me. If you have questions, put them in the chat. I always like to end my slides or presentations with one of these quotes. People don't plan to fail, they just fail to plan. We spend so much time planning birthday parties and vacations and weddings. Like, take an hour to do this stuff. Maybe it might take a couple hours. Okay, let's be real. Take a couple hours. But how much peace of mind would we have? How far ahead, again, would our communities be getting? And then my last resource here is just connect with me. So part of my give back for, work with Native Learning Center is offering my financial planning services. It's no cost. I do a 30-minute consultation over Zoom, no obligation. You don't have to work with me, but maybe if you're like, you know what, Shantae, I have some questions. I want to learn more about my situation. You want my professional opinion, you can scan the code. It'll take you to my calendar to schedule the 30-minute Zoom consultation. It does not hurt. Like I mentioned earlier, people typically get ahead further when they're working with a financial professional. You don't have to work with me, but I would love to be a resource to you, your community, your loved ones. I'm happy to connect. You can sign up to get my newsletter. You can just email me at Shantae.moore@howmoneyworks.com. I do events and webinars, and I just share financial tips and resources at least once a week in my newsletter, and then connect with me on social media. I'll be happy to. I always share quick little videos there as well. So, Brooke, I'm going to pass it back over to you. Thank you all so much for tuning in today, and I hope you learned a lot. So thank you so much. Brooke, back over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Shantae. That was a fantastic presentation. Everybody, I have put the webinar feedback survey link into the chat. If you don't mind taking a minute or two to complete that for us, it helps us at the Native Learning Center know what's working, what we can improve upon. There's a space at the end for you to suggest future topics for webinars that we could explore. And we do also share the feedback with our instructors, so it helps them as well. It's a completely anonymous survey, so feel free to be as candid as you would like. We hope you'll join us for our next webinar. Feel free to check out our different recorded webinars. You can find them on our YouTube channel. There's a whole playlist called the Cathedra Webinar Archive. That link is also posted in the shared notes. Feel free to share that resource with your friends, share it with your colleagues. Feel free to check out our upcoming training events. We post about them to our various social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. We have our in-house produced podcast, the Hope a Thing, a Native American podcast. You can listen to that wherever you listen to your podcasts, or you can watch the videos with our special guests on YouTube. All right, folks, that's all we have for you today. Oh, sorry, excuse me. I'm going to go ahead and leave the room open so that you have that link to the webinar feedback survey in the chat, but I will stop the recording now.